So hi everyone and welcome. Thanks for making it out on this freezing rainy evening. Those who made it into the room, and hello to lots of folks who made it on through. Today we're going to look at struggle and acceptance. There's a big topic in mindfulness and spiritual circles. You hear that word a lot. And I use it a lot in the guided meditation. You accept whatever's arising in your experience, whether it's tension or sticky thoughts. The name of the game is acceptance. And what we tend to do though is struggle. and there's a whole bunch of reasons. This question came up a couple sessions ago. So why do we struggle so much? When we kind of know, especially if we've been at this game for a while, that we know what happens. And then there's also questions, well, really accept everything? Like, it sounds kind of passive, or it sounds like resignation or something. So, you can kind of gets, the ego likes to bring that up a lot. And there's it's a legitimate question as well. So I'm just going to kind of come at it from all these different directions. I mean, there is this notion of not struggling with life is been around for a long time. I mean, the Buddha looked at the psychology of it, called it clinging, craving, tanha, and pali, and really delved into how we create suffering for ourselves through that process of struggling with what is. Now, he didn't have all the, the neuroscientific tools and science the way we have now, but there's people like Richard Davidson and Sarah Lazar, Rick Hansen, who are doing this work, who are looking at the neurological aspects of what happens when we accept versus when we struggle. I use the word struggle instead of clinging, because I think struggle really, for me, it represents, it's a better translation in a way for me. For others, clinging. If clinging works, just pretend I'm saying clinging. But for struggle, it just seems like it's like a tug of war thing. It's a struggle. Whereas clinging can be, seem a little more innocent. At any rate, they've proven a lot of what the Buddha was saying psychologically using the scientific tools that they have at hand, and we've come also to understand the evolutionary aspects of struggle. Right? We're wired to struggle, so don't be surprised when you do. Right? I mean, we're wired for survival and reproduction. We're just really intelligent survival and reproduction organisms, just a little smarter than your pet dog and we basically have these biological and chemical systems that are geared all towards that, right? The survival, the fight, flight, or freeze, the sympathetic nervous system, the HPA axis. This stuff all just happens. Like you don't control it. It's the body doing what it does because it's got a survival instinct. So you're wired to struggle. So don't be too surprised when it happens, and you kind of want that to be around when you want to survive, right? When you need that flight or fight or whatever it might be. To actually survive. I always use the example of, you know enough not to step out in front of a car, or not to stick your hand on an element on the stove, and so forth. Those are simple examples, but it goes much deeper, of course. So we're wired to struggle, and we've evolved with this survival mechanisms and reproduction as well. So the Buddha really detailed the psychological aspects. And it was simply by looking at his direct experience that he learned in this way. He didn't have again, even the psychological tools that we have now. You just look at, okay, when I crave or where there's craving or aversion, so wanting or pushing away, I feel this. And you can do that yourself. I use the word unease. There's kind of a ripple of anxiety. There's a bit of anxiousness going on. And when I'm accepting what's happening moment to moment, there's a certain kind of easefulness and peace that arises. What gets really shocking is when you do this with like discomfort, and that's why you'll hear in a meditation, tune into whatever's arising in your body, even if it's discomfort, and particularly perhaps if it's discomfort, because that's really where we can see how even letting go or letting be or accepting that, what we would label as discomfort, can really be some deep insights into how accepting that discomfort allows it to dissolve. And you start to see, oh wow, that's amazing. I have this massive headache, and I can actually sit and just allow it to be. Notice when there's any resistance, and just allow that, not judging anything, and starting to notice how it can slowly let go. We've used the word surrender in the past. Some folks like the word surrender as well as accept. Does the word accept, how does that word resonate with people? Like when you hear the word, accept everything as it is. Did some people kind of go, oh, I don't know if that sounds kind of extreme. Like, what if I drop something on my foot? Do I accept the pain that? And then, of course, people might say, what about an abusive relationship? What's that mean? What's acceptance mean in terms of that? So do people have questions around that, how that word gets used in spiritual circles, in mindfulness? Are people pretty content with what it means for them? Excuse me, I've got a bit of a congestion in my chest. The usual thing you hear is it sounds very passive. And I think one thing we can be sure of, at least within the Buddha's teaching, is that he didn't teach passivity. In fact, I kind of think he was a bit of from what we, from the stories we hear about his life, whether they're true or not, who knows, but from the stories, he seemed like a real rebel to me, like he was against the caste system in India, which to me, which is a very ingrained system in the culture and the society at the time. So to be against the caste system would have been very radical. He supported women's rights in a certain particular way for his day, that women could become enlightened. Other religions at the time said, no, it's only men that can become enlightened, and Brahmins and so on. He allowed women freedom to practice like everybody else. Of course, human societies took those teachings and changed them all around so that they don't actually look all that equal in terms of gender relations even today. But in his day, from what you read, he was pushing the boundaries on a lot of social issues. So there was no sense of being passive. In terms of resignation, just accept what it is, and then, it means you don't do anything. It's actually quite the opposite. The idea is you accept what's happened in the moment, just this moment, so that then in that pause, the space that just allows that a wise response can emerge. So rather than being reactive, so when you're struggling, right, you're just reacting. Oh, I hate that. Oh, I gotta get rid of that. Oh, I hate that. I gotta get rid of that. You're just kind of like, oh, this is what's happening in this moment. What can I do now? See. So if you're in an abusive relationship, it's kind of like, well, this is what's happening. Now what do I do about it? And respond from that place of space. We've talked in the past about decision making from a place of wisdom and where that comes from. So I won't go into it too much more. So it's struggle. So we struggle and we suffer. So what do? I told you you're wired to struggle, yet the struggling causes suffering. So it sounds like it's, you know, like, what's the way out of this? And the Buddha taught that, excuse me, that we see in our direct experience that struggle causes suffering, and that non-struggle there, the cessation of suffering. And then he gave the path to practice to see this, towards seeing this. I'd just like to add a few things to that. So you can't stop struggling. That's just more struggle. If you sit down and go, okay, I'm gonna stop this struggling, well, you immediately set yourself up to struggle. So that doesn't work. So you got, what do you do at this point? I can't. And okay, of course you want the struggle that keeps you alive. So there's that aspect that you're going to have to, at that very basic level, it's going to happen. I'm speaking more of a kind of higher level struggle, but it just happens. You can see this in your meditation. You can be sitting down to meditate, and you can be in the perfect location, quiet. If you like nature sounds, there's nature sounds. You get the perfect chair. It's most comfortable. All angles are just right. The temperature is nice. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. Sit down. What about this that happened yesterday? Huh? You start struggling, and the mind starts rehashing old stories, or so. Even in that perfect environment, all of a sudden there's struggle, and you can actually see, oh wow, all this, everything's perfect as I define it. Yeah, struggle is occurring. So what do you do? How can we relinquish struggle if this is the case? The habits of mind are ingrained, right? It's biological, it's evolutionary, it's neurological. It's also psychological in the sense that these are well-worn neural pathways and conditioned patterns. Buddha would call them conditioned patterns, translating loosely. It's just you're just living out these conditioned patterns. So what do? You can't say, "Oh, I'm going to stop this," right? Because you've all heard the Carl Jung saying, "What you resist persists and even grows." So resisting doesn't work, just struggle. And it's happening. So I spent some time in my practice kind of looking at this. with this real kind of puzzlement. What do I do? And I came to the conclusion through a lot of meditation practice and practicing in my life that all I can do is not struggle with the struggling, accept that struggle is occurring. And just be okay that in this moment, there is struggle occurring. There's this old conditioned pattern that's coming forth. And by, again, you don't want to set yourself up by saying, okay, I'm going to accept the struggling and then it's all going to stop, because you can see where that leads, right? More wanting and struggling. So it's just accepting that struggling is occurring, not looking for an answer. No answer is the answer. As Jason almost brings up every session, bring in the beginner's mind, the don't know mind, which is so central. Or as I like to put it, what if, is it possible that what I think I know isn't true about all of this? That suspending a belief allows innumerable possibilities to open. So I found just bringing those attitudes to whatever was happening in terms of struggling with what is, allowed struggle to diminish somewhat. So I began to notice a couple of things. I began to notice that when I was feeling really at ease and at peace, I wasn't struggling. So the Buddha was onto something here, just noticing my direct experience. I go, oh, wow. Now there's non-struggling happened. I didn't do it. It happened. And there's peace. And then I began to notice that really quickly I started to struggle again. You notice that too? That's a real mind trip. Oh, I'm not struggling, there's peace, and boom, struggling comes in again. And I, it's kind of the ego just doesn't like that non-struggle piece. Because when you're not struggling, the egoic mind is no longer center stage. Have you noticed when you're not struggling that you're not really thinking of yourself? Self-concerns kind of faded. So when the ego's not center stage, it kind of goes, oh, I got to struggle again. And it jumps in with struggling. And go, oh, there's struggle again. No, this feels like uneasiness or anxiety. So I started to dwell in those moments when non-struggle just happened. And I've talked about these, everybody's had these moments. You don't have to meditate at all to have these moments. There are moments like when you're in awe of a sunset or a beautiful mountain. There's just awe. And you lose all self-reference and you're just totally, captured in awe. Or when you're playing an instrument, perhaps, you can be, or sport, you can be totally involved in an activity where the self-referencing dissolves. Like that's where the most beautiful music, I think, is produced, as opposed to somebody who wants to get everything perfect, right? Remember when I first heard Adele on the radio, that song where her voice breaks and it's all there's nothing perfect about it. I thought, wow, that's amazing. And she recorded it that way. And that's how, that's how you record music, just like the rawness of what she was feeling. Or holding up your newborn baby. Another moment of where you have that there's non-struggle and your self-referencing disappears and it vanishes and it's just the moment. So we've all experienced these moments. So we can, whenever you feel that those moments of non-struggle, just kind of really relish them and dwell there. Of course, I shouldn't say of course, but struggle jumps back in. We've all experienced that because the ego goes, I have to be center stage. Oh, I can't be center stage, or baby can't be center. I have to be center. So the ego jumps in and takes it away again. So this is not a philosophical exploration, and you all know that I don't really explore philosophy a whole lot. It's all about looking at our direct experience, and how we can see firsthand struggle and non-struggle. Because the Buddha taught this whole game is really a simple misunderstanding about the way that we perceive the world and ourselves. It's an innocent misunderstanding that we don't perceive reality or ourselves the way they actually are. We perceive reality, things, and phenomenon, ourselves as independent, inherently independent, separate things interacting with other separate, independent things. It's that simple misperception that causes this whole thing. Because if you realize you weren't separate and independent, everything that's happened is based on what the interaction with all the other elements are, the other causes and conditions. You wouldn't struggle, right? What would you be protecting? Wholeness? Wholeness just unfolds. So to relinquish struggle, we can recognize that we create our suffering through this innocent misunderstanding about the nature of ourselves and reality. The Buddha gave a lot of teachings, but I think they all boil down to that. It's funny, that even in the Four Noble Truths, he goes on in quite length. If you ever read it, it's a lot of repetition because it was oral teaching. So things are repeated over and over. But it's also got a lot of different details in there. And then he says, in short, whenever I see that, I think, oh, this is going to be a real zinger, right? In short, it's the 5 aggregates of clinging that cause suffering. And the 5 aggregates are all the things we mistake for ourselves. Body, mental formations, I've mentioned these 5 before. Perceptions, feeling tone, and sense consciousness. So clinging to those, or thinking that those create an inherently independent self, is the cause of suffering. So he boiled it all down into that pith teaching, you could say. So when you truly see that you're creating suffering for yourself through this misperception of reality, you truly see this, it's transformative. You realize that it has nothing to do with circumstances. You sitting in that perfect temperature, perfect cushion chair, perfect environment, and suffering still happens. And you realize something that we talked about, I think was it last session or one before, about participant raised the issue of difficult people at work. And my response was, can you see them as your Dharma teacher? Probably not maybe perhaps the response that you're looking for, but I thought about that, and I don't know, that answer just came. I thought about that, and I think, can we see all of our painful situations, difficult people, as opportunities to grow, to see, to transform, to be free, which makes them all Dharma teachers. So my practice excelled exponentially when I went through multiple concussions and severe physical pain. Took me a while to see it as a Dharma teacher at the time, but my practice hadn't evolved where I could see it that way. But if you're in this moment, can say to yourself, oh, okay, like this, I can do, grow, be free by practicing with this, seeing it as an opportunity to practice rather than pushing it away. It changes your kind of, right, your approach to it. So just kind of remembering that. So that's one way to relinquish struggle. Face it, without difficulties and pain, I wouldn't be here. Imagine without difficulties and pain, you all wouldn't be here. In fact, without difficulties and pain, nobody would really be interested in anything I'm saying right now. Right? So they really are our Dharma teacher. So we can release the hold that struggle has on our minds with this kind of observation and wise reflection of what's happening, and ask ourselves, what are the effects of struggling? Is it causing suffering, or is it causing happiness? The effects of non-struggling. Is it the cause of suffering, or is it the cause of happiness? And just seeing that again and again. And of course, when you're experiencing a lot of painful, difficult situations, you get to see it more and more. We really start to see that struggle doesn't help us in any way. So I've got this 7-step process, and maybe I'll put this on the by the video when I post it, so you don't have to sort of write it down. I love these. I always come up with these 7 steps and all that. And I realize that you kind of have to read them and maybe reflect on them, because me just saying them is not going to be, give you kind of an opportunity, but let it kind of wash over you and see what resonates. Often it's a piece of it. So struggle arises, right, because we have craving or aversion. We want something or we don't want something, so we struggle. So separate the desire, either to have it or not have it, from the attachment to it. So there's this kind of raw desire arising. Notice that there's also there's this notion of a separate self that's attached to either getting it or not getting it. So try to separate the two, and examine how whatever's arising is related to feeling tone. That initial kind of little pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. But we're just seeing the arising of feeling tone, which is one of the 5 aggregates. And then look for signals in the body that there's struggle. And the telltales for me is the body. Quite often the body's the first thing that speaks for me personally. And for some, it's stories and images. Say, oh, here comes that same story. And the story is what is their signal that they're caught in struggling, runaway thoughts. And some people, it's just this feeling. I feel uneasy. I feel uneasy, or I feel anxious, or again, that often manifests as a bodily, but just that feeling kind of off. So look for those signals. Investigate the story. So investigate the body, investigate the story, and kind of look at the story. Is it narrow? Is it repetitive? Is it draining? Or is it kind of loose and spacious and so if it's struggle, you're going to see that it's narrow and often repetitive. A drain on energy. I've said this many times before. The amount of energy we consume struggling with what is ginormous. You just have so much more energy if you can relinquish that struggle. And here's a key one. Notice that the awareness of the struggle is separate from the struggle, from the actual struggle. So this is something that I've been talking about in past sessions, is that you can step back into awareness, that which knows. Notice there's a separation between the struggling that's happening and the awareness that the struggle is happening. There's two things occurring. You go, oh yeah, I'm struggling. Something is aware of that. So there's a process of observing and awareness. So notice that there's a separation there. And then just from that place of awareness, just accept that struggling is occurring. Notice if there's any aversion to the struggling, and if there is, accept that too. So you're accepting. Probably the two words that sum up this whole practice is awareness and accepting. And really, you're accepting. And if you're not accepting, you accept that. Right? So not judging the judging. It comes sometimes here in mindfulness circles. And then, so we notice if there's any aversion and accept that too. And 7 is step back from the struggling and sense into the awareness, or that which knows that struggling has occurred, and rest there. So the final step is to rest in your true nature. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Perfect timing. So again, I'll try to remember to post those seven. I don't know if they're really steps. They kind of all probably happen more simultaneously and in a stepwise way. But yeah, open it up for any questions or comments.
I'll go. Stephen. It's been a minute. Hello. Hi, Stephen. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Stephen, for that awesome talk and meditation. Well, it's a reoccurring theme. This is not going to be new for you, but I thought I'll bring it up again. Why not? So for me personally, what I deal with, I suppose, what I'm challenged with is the loops, as you know, right? So a struggle comes up. It's usually a shame spiral, something from the past, because my ego loves to find the things in the past. Let's do that. And then it pops up. And then I'm like, okay, I see you. I even understand why you're there. I even understand what the underlying cause is, which for me, I mean, it comes from trauma, but there's also an underlying fear. Fear is usually the base of everything. Fear that my kids will be taken away from me, fear that I'm not worthy, fear that I'm going to be shunned by those that I love, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that. I know not to identify. I know not to struggle with the struggle. I know, so I'm like, okay, I know all the things. And I'm just walking around functioning, highly functioning in society, with this thing just kind of floating around behind me. Yeah, I see you, kind of like, the Buddha and Mara. I'm like, okay, I see you, but it doesn't go away. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to push you away, but I see you. But the problem for me is that it gets to a point where it's just so beeping distracting. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to push you away, but kind of really annoying. So do you have any kind of, I know that there aren't any steps for me personally, Kalyanamita, wise friends, as the Buddha would say, are usually the only thing at that point for me. Because I know that you talked about how people that have traumatic childhoods, especially, they get a little bit more, I think you said obsessive thoughts, which is what I get. When I get to that point, the only thing that can pull me out is disclosure. So coming to you, for example, I'm uncomfortable saying this to you, but I know I'll feel better afterwards. I just kind of know that every time I just rip off the Band-Aid, you're good. Right now, my brain doesn't think I'm good. It feels like I'm dying, but it's okay afterwards. Like, okay. So I know that self-disclosure helps, but I would like to get to a point where I don't have to reach out to a wise friend, and that I, this thing just kind of eventually just dissipates, because it doesn't, unless I talk to somebody, you, my therapist, you all, random people, anyone anyone will listen to me, really. It doesn't go away. So any tips would be awesome. Thank you. The end of my story.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, you're really pointing out these conditioned patterns, right? And trauma creates deep conditioned patterns. Again, it's survival. Our bodies are doing what's necessary to survive. If you can't handle something as a child, it stuffs it down into the unconscious, and then it stays there. And then when you're at a certain age, it decides it's going to come up. And I mean, you've been living it your whole life unconsciously, but all of a sudden it can become conscious. So this is a process that, in a way, it's spiritual. Spirituality can be helpful, and the spiritual practices can be helpful, but oftentimes, as you pointed out, it's working with somebody individually or a group, but just putting voice to it, and relate and seeing the pattern, and letting it self-liberate in a way, letting it come out. Just out of the unconscious into the conscious, and then it can be, let go of. So that's just has to keep happening. There's just perhaps that psychological work keeps on happening. In terms of the practice and what I was talking about, I would ask you, what you use the word, it's so annoying. So I would ask you, what does annoying feel like? Because the word annoying is it's funny, we can talk and say, well, I accepted and I allowed, but it was really annoying, which is a non-accepting. There's a rejection of some kind there.
Yes, it pulls me away from the present moment. That I suppose that's a more accurate description of it, and that's that. I suppose maybe less annoying and more distracting, just pulling me away from present moment. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, this is tough. So present moment isn't like a destination resort. I don't know why, but it's not like so it's when you notice that, okay, I'm no longer whatever in the present moment, you're in the present moment.
Right. Okay. This is good. So the thing is lurking. My kid is talking to me about her day at school, and all I hear from her is wah, wah, wah. And then the thing is in my head. So I suppose I am present, but I'm present to the thing. So yeah, I
Yeah.
guess, yeah,
As long
interesting.
as you're not lost in reactive conditioned patterns, you're present.
Right. Yeah, that's
Even if reactive conditioned patterns are occurring, if
right.
you're lost in them, if you're conscious of them, you're present.
Right. So maybe I'm making progress because in the past I would have numbed them. I would have tried to escape from them. Now I'm like fully present with them.
Yeah,
Okay. Yay.
full catastrophe.
Okay, good. So, well, maybe that's good. The more I see them and the more that I allow them, the less power. I don't know if that's a word that I can use, the less power eventually they'll have. Because up until a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have even allowed it. I would have been like, have a drink of, have a glass of wine or go out and party or, et cetera, fill in the blanks. But I'm not doing any of those things now, and I haven't for the past few years. So maybe that's why they're a little bit more, oh, all anything that I've suppressed is bubbling up maybe. So maybe eventually one after the other, it'll lose its pizzazz,
Yeah,
hopefully.
or not. But
Okay,
you'll be present with it either way.
okay, thanks. Thanks, Stephen. Good to know. Thank you.
You like the word surrender, and I think that's a really good word um, um, to um, to remember. Just surrender into it, whatever is arising up, and allowing it. And it's a challenge because we've maybe got the habit of stuffing it back down. And even if that habit's not there, sometimes it comes up, and it's surprising how powerful it can be, and to see it. So surrendering to it can take time, but it's kind of that titrate approach that I talk about, where you approach and then, oh, that's too much, you back off next time. So you're backing off with the knowledge that I can come back to this later, not with the attitude that I'm going to stuff this down and never want to see it again. So that self-compassionate approach is also important. That being gentle and balanced in the way that we approach those very powerful conditioned habits.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you, because there is that sense of I just want to finish this. Every time I go into therapy, I'm like, oh, there's this thing. Let's finish it all. I just want to, because I just want it all done. So no, that's good. The titration, I resonate with that. And also, as you were talking, just I promise, I think this is going to be the final thing, but I do realize there is a sense of clinging for me every time I feel better after something. So I go through it, I ride the wave, and then I'm done with the wave. I'm like, oh, now I'm done forever. It's all good. So I am clinging to that kind of finality every time. So I'm seeing now as you're talking, there is that sense of that. Every time something comes up, I'm like, wow, I thought it was done. So maybe just every time, I'm feeling that awe, just be like, yeah, awe. But don't cling on to, as you say often, don't cling to the awe either. Just anything might happen, and that's all, and it's all good. So thank you so much. This was helpful as always.
Hello, Stephen. Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Accepting the way the present moment is. Yes, it's very well said. It comes on to, okay, I have no control over these things. Let it be. I yield on to it. I surrender to it. The other words which come onto mind, I console myself to it, that, okay, whatever is there, consolation. But when in life you keep on going from moment to moment, and you sit back And all these adjectives, if I may use the word, they sound very negative, as if I'm defeated. I mean, the very word defeated, I am giving in, I'm yielding to it. It's hard to take it when you are living in everyday life and you come across other people. And of course, that is a very negative thing in our daily life. It's human nature. You come to compare. And that's where all these things come into my mind, that what am I doing? I'm just accepting a defeat, if that's the right word. But then I sit back and say, no, it's not a defeat. It is accepting the way things are. But again, when you compare with other people, and unfortunately you're living in human society, the comparison does come in. And the human mind is such that we live, in that comparison. It's hard to take it.
To remembering that acceptance is not resignation. So acceptance positions us for wise action. So we're only accepting what's in this immediate moment. In fact, as soon as you've noticed what's in this moment, it's actually already happened. You can't notice it till it's happened. So you're not really accepting the moment. You're just acknowledging that it's already happened. This is what's here now. It's already happened. All you can do is go, okay, this is what's happened. Now what do I do next? How do I respond to this situation wisely? And that's where significant change can happen in people's lives, is with that wise reflection and wise action. And the acceptance is not a not a belief. So we're not replacing one belief system with another belief system, and with a belief system that I just accept everything as it is, let go, let everything be, and things will be okay. It's not like that. It's the accepting everything as it is acknowledging that this is what's happened, and then how now can I respond wisely. So just to point out those two things, that it very much an action-oriented, engaged practice. There's no flavor of resignation to it. So yeah, if the situation is harmful, then you can act to change that situation by all means with wise reflection.
I want to share a couple of things arising with acceptance. Maybe you could comment on that. One is white knuckle acceptance. Like I started with chronic pains, I talked about. I've done a lot of sitting with that, but every once in a while, it's like, I can tell that there's a gritting of the teeth almost, like some type of craving for acceptance or something. And it's just a matter of degree. So then I'll be at, and white knuckles. So that was arising, and also your suggestion around acceptance of harm brought me to harm is so often coming from prior harm, trauma, etc., and how easy it is for that to morph into forgiveness, which doesn't take away from the reality of the harm. And I wondered if you wanted to comment on either of those, the white knuckling or the forgiveness.
So white, I don't know if I understand what the white knuckling acceptance, it sounds like it might be, I'll accept this and then it'll go away.
Like a trying to accept.
Oh, because I'm supposed to, so it's.
I want, almost like it's a craving for.
It's part of the spiritual path, so I have to accept this moment. Remember, it's accepting this moment, it's not accepting behavior. There's another, it's not accepting behavior. Acceptance has nothing to do with behavior. But yeah, the notion of accepting so that something will go away is something we all go through on the spiritual path. Like, especially with pain, bodily pain. If people have had bodily pain and you're on the spiritual path, it's almost, you're going to go, okay, I'm just going to accept this, whatever, you need a hip replacement or something. I was working with a woman who was waiting for an operation. So it hurt. Yeah, I'm accepting. You can just tell it was like, okay, but it's still here. It's still here, right? I've accepted it. So it's this wanting it to go away, and that's where the word surrender is really helpful, because at some point you just go, okay, I just can't even accept this. I can't even practice acceptance anymore. I give up. I'm done. That's acceptance. I'm done. Can't fight with this pain anymore. That's it. I'm at my the last of my energy and my whatever I could put into it. So that's when acceptance can occur. And so the word surrender is very helpful there. Forgiveness is a whole other deep topic, especially when we get into relationship for harmful behavior in relationships and forgiving. All I'll say is that forgiveness allows us to break the chain that's connecting us to whoever might have harmed us. So we forgive for our own growth, transformation. The other person doesn't know, doesn't even need to know. If you're still angry at the other person, they don't know, or you're just, the Buddha saying is like picking out hot coals and throwing them. You're only hurting yourself with the anger. So yeah, forgiveness is really to allow yourself to move on, break that chain that connects you to the past. But that's a whole other. Just saying that can leave, a lot of people go, well, I don't know if I can go there, but that's fine. Again, it's a process that we can work with. But yeah, forgiveness is forgiving some terrible things is taking acceptance practice, in a different way. So again, we're not forgiving the behavior. We're not saying it's okay that it happened. It's not right. It doesn't make it right. Forgiveness has nothing to do with any of that. It's an internal healing that's involved here. We've done a session on forgiveness, haven't we? I can't remember now. I think so, yeah. maybe we could revive it and update it. Let's see where. Sometimes I do that. I bring up an old, I'll say something will come up in a talk, right? And I'll say, I know I've done a talk and I've got like, I don't know, 600 talks or something. So I go in and I search it, and sure enough, I read it and I go, oh no, that's gotta be completely redone. That's good. And it gets, it becomes a new talk anyway, even though it's on the same topic. Because we're always in different places, right? We do these things. I mean, some of the talks are 15 years old. Yeah. Yeah, so that answered addressed a little bit of what you're saying.
During my meditation tonight, I was almost not hearing you. I was so lost in obsessive thinking, just residual thinking from the workday. And when you're going through the different parts of our body, I just had these moments of realizing I can barely feel that today, and then I would get lost again in my very intense obsessive thinking, kind of reliving conversations and things that happened during the day. And I was really struggling with myself, just accept these thoughts are there, and I'm wrestling in this very intellectual space with myself tonight. And then I only felt like about 5 minutes had passed, and I realized we're probably wrapping up soon. And I could hear you moving towards the bell. And so I was coming out of this time loop because my thought was so ruminative. And then I thought, well, just begin again and take a moment. And I suddenly felt my body again, and I realized I was feeling sad and stressed from the day, and then I had a lot of fear and like old trauma responses to not that serious conversations, just things that are particularly hard. And I finally realized, I was not able to accept that. I was just feeling really uncomfortable at the end of the night. And even though it took half an hour, being able to just have a moment of, oh, okay, that discomfort's there. That's what I was accepting that. And then and then I realized that's about all the clarity I'm going to get tonight, but that's okay.
For people with this obsessive thinking that goes on, as I've said in the past, it's often sometimes based on trauma, because I think we've all experienced trauma to some degree. The obsessive thinking of body practices is helpful, even if you feel like I'm doing this body practice and geez, it's obsessive thinking just goes on and on and on. Like you say, just accept, well, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Oh, he's on the knee. Okay. Obsessive thinking. Oh, there it is again. There. Oh, no, he's on the back. I wonder what happened to the right. Like that thought arises, and you just kind of go back, and you're aware that there's obsessive thinking, and then pick up the next body part. And it may feel like nothing's happening, but there is healing and transforming going on as you're just being present with that soup of thoughts and sensations. A meditation that can be helpful is the lower belly breathing meditation. We did those, haven't done them in a while. Just breathing, concentrating on the breath in the belly for a little bit, and just coming back to that body sensation. It's a very grounding, Kumbhara, the core chakra. It kind of grounds us and can it's a place other than the abstract realm of the head too. So I spend a lot of time in the head area, and perhaps some people think just get, for some people just going down, even to the feet. Imagine there's a reason that, John Kabat-Zinn started with the big toe of the right foot when he did MBSR. It's like way down from the head, way, way down. You're lying down, it's about as far away from the head as you can get, right? And it's just to ground us in the concreteness of the body. Of course, the mind wanders and does stuff, and you say, oh, there it is again. There it is. And not even there it is again, just there it is. And come back to wherever the body scan is. But yeah, body scans are people that have excessive thinking often will say to me, I hate the body scan. My invitation to them is to do the body scan every day for a month. See what happens. Just the body scan. Get, John, I've got some, John's got all kinds of body scans online now and on Insight Timer, 30 minutes of big toe to the top of the head and see what happens. But give it at least a month, even 2 months. Inevitably, the person would come back and say, I still hate the body scan. I'll go do it for another month. Eventually, they're going to come back. They're going to get wise to my, say, oh, I love the body scan. Still. Yeah. So that's how I would, just be gentle. And watch. I know you know the practice of allowing the obsessive thinking just to be. Okay, time flies. It's great to see everybody. Glad you could make it out.